What's up, everybody? Celadora. So let me just first off, I just want to show you something real quick. Let me just bring you over here. This is my residence of dwelling. This is my room. Let me show you something right here. This is a mirror on my door. I have a full mirror on my door. What's this right here? Oh, this is a giant fucking crack right through the middle of my mirror. And let me just adjust this real quick. The reason I wanted to show you this huge crack in my mirror is because guess what? Millions and millions of people believe that if you have a crack in your mirror, or if your mirror is broken, you're going to have bad luck. And I want to ask a question. Does this mean that most of the time mirrors don't give bad luck, but so many people have used subjective evidence to say, well, I had bad luck one time after I looked in a broken mirror or broke my mirror, that so many millions of people that surely a few of them have had bad luck produced by a broken mirror. I mean, just by probability alone, that's it's just far more likely that every once in a while a broken mirror gives bad luck. Or maybe humans are pattern-seeking animals, and I'm kind of throwing this, I don't want to dwell too much on Don Exodus, but he's the one that sort of brings this up, that, he brings it up with ghosts, that there's so many ghost experiences that it's just far more likely that at least one is right. Or, Don Exodus, maybe people are pattern-seeking animals. Maybe people's minds are incredibly complex. Maybe people have a huge imagination. And you should know this more than anyone. I mean, you're a biologist and you study evolution. I mean, pattern-seeking, searching for patterns in nature is a huge evolutionary advantage to human beings. It allows us to better predict future events. And it works great for that, but it has downfalls because we start seeing patterns where there aren't any. There's no bad luck, but we're attributing something bad that happened in our life to a random occurrence, like a mirror breaking. I mean, that's how this kind of shit gets started. We're fallible, pattern-seeking beings. We're imaginative. That's why subjective evidence is no good, because people imagine shit. People have subjective evidence for every type of God and religion that's ever been created. For every person that's had a subjective experience about Jesus Christ find someone who's had a subjective experience that Joseph Smith is the one true prophet. Why is it that more people have subjective religious experiences in the culture and religion that they're raised? You would think that some random person in a bushman in a tribe in fucking Africa, that's never even heard of Christianity, or you would think that sometimes Jesus, would appear to him in a dream and talk to him, or God would talk to him, and he would have subjective evidence for Christianity. But no. You have to know Christianity, you have to be a part of it, you have to believe in it to have a fucking subjective evidence experience that further, enhances your belief. You try and claim that, Don Exodus tries to claim that subjective evidence to the person who is experiencing the evidence is as valid as objective evidence is to the rest of society. But that's not true. If I had a subjective experience where something extraordinary happened to me, I'd be like, well, maybe I was dreaming, maybe I was being overly imaginative, maybe I took too many drugs, maybe I was a child and I was remembering it wrong. there's an infinite number of possibilities. It's far more likely that my brain is deceiving me, that my imagination is out of control than an actual a spirit, came down and started talking to me. I mean, doesn't this, strike anything? Like, I really want to give you everyone, a really great example of what I'm talking about. And let me just tell a little story. I'm not sure. A lot of people have probably seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, and it's a pretty good movie. It's about a guy who is like a mathematician, and he's like a brilliant mathematician, and his name's John Nash, and he starts developing paranoid schizophrenia, and he starts seeing people. He starts seeing a guy like his age, and there's like this little girl that's also in there that's the same kind of deal. She, part of his imagination, and they start telling him to do stuff, and telling him to fight the Russians, and he starts just going fucking crazy, right? And like his friends are all worried about him, and they take him to a mental institution, and they determine he has schizophrenia, and they give him like pills and medicate him, and the movie goes on, and he has like a wife, and he has a baby with her, and he's like on all these meds, and it's just kind of like fucking with his personality, and it's kind of just like a whole sad scenario. And he stops I don't remember if he stops taking them, but something happens, and he starts seeing these people again. He starts seeing like his friend, and this little girl, like 3 years old or whatever, and he like relapses, and you're like, oh my god, is he gonna relapse for good, or whatever, and so there's like this climactic scene where his wife has like taken their child, and she's like leaving, because he's kind of going crazy, and he's frightening her, and she's like, I'm going, I'm leaving to my mother's, or I don't know, whatever, and she gets in her car, and she's like driving away, and he's like seeing his friends, and they're all like talking to him, like all these imaginary people, and he's like thinking, and he's like, oh my god, and he runs outside in the pouring rain, and he like stops his wife's car, and he's like, she never gets older, she never grows up, and he's talking about the little girl that he's been seeing, and he's talking about how she's always been in his hallucinations, and since he was in college or whatever, and he's now like 20 years later, and she hasn't grown at all. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's not real. He's trying to decide if they're real, and that's how he figures it out. He exposes his subjective evidence to scrutiny. It's fucking brilliant. That's how he doesn't get rid of it with meds. He figures it out. He figures out what part of his experiences are untrue. That's what I'm talking about here. That's what I'm talking about. To all these people, that say that subjective evidence can be used to justify your own personal beliefs. Why don't you fucking subject it to scrutiny? Why don't you figure out if that subjective evidence, that subjective experience is real? That's just such a brilliant way. The movie ends like he's like teaching a class at like a college, and he leaves, and like this random guy comes up to him, and he's like, oh, are you John Nash? And John Nash points, he grabs someone that's leaving the class, and he's like, hey, can you see him? Like, is he real? That's so fucking brilliant, isn't it? I mean, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to take someone else, and you need to be like, is this subjective experience I'm having actually something real, or is it all in my head? So anyways,